Courage is a common denominator in the extraordinary stories of ordinary people. Speaking of courage, this is the spectacular Veterans Memorial Park in downtown Huntsville, a marvelous tribute to our nation's heroes, their patriotism, their sacrifice, their duty, and their courage. Tom Brokaw tells of his visit to Normandy in 1984. D-Day, the victorious invasion of Normandy's beaches on June 6, 1944, changed the course of World War II and changed history. But that victory was costly and demanded extraordinary courage. Tom Brokaw listened as veterans Gino Murty and Harry Garton walked the beach they had landed on 40 years earlier, and relived the day and described the scene. That hillside was loaded with mines, and a unit of sappers, combat engineers, had gone first to find where the mines were. A number of those guys were lying on the hillside, their legs shattered by the explosions. They had shot themselves up with morphine, and they were telling us where it was safe to step. They were about 25 yards apart, our guys, calmly telling us how to get up the hill. They were human markers. I love that story, and I marvel at such courage. That's our heritage. That's the kind of courage that has made and has kept our country great. We pay our respects and celebrate that kind of courage on Memorial Day. But sometimes courage is not on public display as it was on D-Day. Sometimes courage is private and personal, unnoticed and unheralded. A young widow and mother of three fought back the tears as she accepted, on behalf of her late soldier husband, the Medal of Honor. The President of the United States said to her, "You are a brave young woman." She answered, "Mr. President, I have to be brave because he was brave." Wallace Hamilton, the man who described that scene, went on to say that going home to be both mother and father to three children indeed requires great bravery. He called it the courage of the commonplace, the courage exhibited on 1,000 unseen battlefields where no drums beat and no awards are given. There is the courage that is appropriately celebrated with monuments like these, monuments to soldiers and monuments to first responders. But there is also the courage exhibited on private battlefields by people for whom no monument will ever be erected. Courageous people for whom there will never be a plaque or a trophy with their names on it. People exhibiting the courage of the commonplace, where no drums beat and no awards are given. That includes many of you. I'm reading To Kill a Mockingbird again. In that timeless novel is an interesting story of courage. Mrs. Henry Lafayette Dubose was a neighbor to Atticus Finch and his son and daughter, Jim and Scout. Mrs. Dubose was an old, crotchety woman. She didn't like children, and she insulted Scout and Jim every time they walked by. One day, Jim, the boy, had had enough. He'd lost his cool and destroyed Mrs. Dubose's camellia bushes. As penance, Jim's dad, Atticus, made Jim read to mean old Mrs. Dubose every afternoon for 2 hours for a whole month. The boy thought he was going to die. Her house smelled bad, and she had these kind of fits, drooling and such. Then, one night, not long after Jim's month-long sentence of reading to her was up, Mrs. Dubose died. Jim didn't much care, but his dad, Atticus, let Jim in on some information. Atticus explained that Mrs. Dubose was addicted to morphine. A doctor had prescribed morphine as a painkiller years earlier, and she'd gotten hooked. But Atticus explained, when Mrs. Dubose recently found out that she had only a little while to live, she decided she wanted to overcome her addiction before she died. The morphine would have made her death more bearable, but she was dead set on gaining freedom from the drug. Jim, reading to her helped distract her from her pain, and those fits that Jim had witnessed were part of her painful withdrawal. Did she die free? Jim asked his dad. As free as the mountain air, answered Atticus. And then Atticus explained to his son, that's why I wanted you to go read to her. I wanted you to see what real courage is, instead of getting the idea that courage is a man with a gun in his hand. It's when you know you're licked before you begin, but you begin anyway, and you see it through no matter what. You rarely win, but sometimes you do. Mrs. Dubose won, all 98 pounds of her. She was the bravest person I ever knew. That's what real courage is, Atticus told his son, and he called the dying woman the bravest person he ever knew. Not the kindest for sure, but the bravest. Kids walking by saw a nasty old woman. They didn't know the private battle that Mrs. Dubose was fighting. Courageously, privately, fighting for freedom from an addiction. Every day, all across the Tennessee Valley. You and I walk by people who are courageously fighting private battles. We don't realize it. Some of you are fighting private battles, exhibiting courage in ways that are private and personal, unnoticed and unheralded. Some of you may be struggling, as was Mrs. Dubose, with an addiction, attending meetings and staying clean. That takes a lot of courage. Some of you are standing for your convictions in the face of ridicule and criticism. You're not likely to get an award for that, and yet there you stand. Some of you are tenderly taking care of your aging parents. Some of you are caring for an ailing spouse. That's a lonely job, I know. The most romantic stories I know are of men and women who said maybe decades ago, for better or for worse. And every day you feed and bathe and care for the love of your life, alone. Some of you might be fighting with a great temptation, the almost overwhelming tug or pull towards something you know is wrong and would be destructive. I would say just about all of us are struggling privately to be courageous in some personal way, maybe in ways no one else knows. And with all my heart, I want to encourage you. In a few minutes, I'm going to be back to remind you that you, my courageous friends, are not alone in your desert place. And to remind you that courage is a common denominator in the extraordinary stories of ordinary people.
Surrounding me, let it break at your name. Still, call the sea to still, the raging me to still, every wave at your name. Jesus, Jesus, you make the darkness tremble. Jesus, Jesus. Lungs to sing once again. I will praise Jesus, Jesus. You make the darkness tremble. Jesus, Jesus. Your silence fair. Jesus, Jesus. You make the darkness tremble. Jesus, Jesus. Jesus, 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 Jesus. 'Cause your name is a light that the shadows can't deny. Your name cannot be overcome. Your name is alive, forever lifted high. Your name cannot be overcome. Your name is a light that the shadows can't deny. Your name cannot be overcome. Your name is alive, forever lifted high. Your name cannot be overcome. Jesus, Jesus, you make the darkness tremble. Jesus, Jesus, you silence fear. Jesus, Jesus, you make the darkness tremble. Jesus, Jesus.
Soldiers, police officers, first responders, those who work in the medical field, these are some of the jobs we think of when we think about jobs that require courage. And at the top of the list would be firefighters. And Corey Green is the head recruiter for Huntsville Fire and Rescue. He joins us. Corey, what made you decide to get into this field?
Initially, I didn't have a reason. I didn't know what my calling was. I didn't know what my purpose was. But I knew I wanted to make a difference in other people in the public's life. So I said, why not try firefighter and let's see if I like it or not. Police officer was another one on my list, but I've tried firefighter first and I absolutely loved it. I love the difference that I make in people's lives. I love changing an unstable situation to make it stable. This is so much that plays effect into it, and I've been fulfilling that role.
And you have to recruit
Yes,
men
ma'am.
and women to become firefighters.
Yes,
What do
ma'am.
you look for when you're recruiting?
Well, we look for all type of different demographics and ethnicities and males and females, but most importantly are the characteristics that we look for. We look for somebody who's goal-driven, somebody who wants to make a difference in the community, somebody that's courageous, somebody that's brave, somebody that really wants to make an impact on their community in a positive way.
And the Bible tells us that we'll never be alone because God goes with us
Yes,
at
ma'am.
all times. And as a firefighter, you have to depend on your team, your other firefighters to go with you. That has to give you courage to be able to do your role.
Yes, definitely. We have a motto that we all stick to. It's 2 in and 2 out. And we never go anywhere alone. We always have a partner with us, somebody that's with us that keep us from freelancing or doing anything that might get us hurt or injured in the long where help is not around. So we always try to stick together and be together, be a team oriented so we can help each other at all times.
And do you have an example, something that comes to mind when you think of, when your team really stepped in and helped you out?
Yeah, I can think of plenty. Just one in specific. When I was a firefighter at Station 5, one of our hazmat stations, we had a structure fire at one of the houses in the district, and I was on in the attic, and the fire had got a little aggressive, and it got in the rafters, the joist, and I actually fell from the attic. And at that moment, I remember realizing that, man, what's about to happen? Am I about to die? Just kind of panic a little bit. That's something that don't happen all the time. But thankfully, me and my partner, we stuck to the rule. So he was there, and within no time, he started tugging on me. Come on, get up, let's go, let's get out. And we were able to get out with no injuries. And just to know that he was there to grab me and help me out made me feel so good and secure, and I was glad that we stuck to what we actually believe in.
That tug had to have been one of the greatest feelings of your life.
It was.
And you have a wife, Brittany,
Yes.
two children.
Yes, ma'am.
Is it hard on the family, you being a firefighter?
Yeah, with our schedule, it's one thing. We work 24 hours on, 48 hours off. but just the stress of the danger that comes with the job. But I try to stress to her the importance of me training and trying to be prepared for any situation and every scenario, but also the fact that I have a partner with me at all times. So you don't have to worry about me being alone and getting hurt by myself. So.
And yeah, training is key as well.
Exactly.
Would you want your children, your son, your daughter, to be firefighters if they wanted to?
If they have the desire to do it, I would definitely recommend it. I think it's a good career to change people's lives and to make a difference. And if that's what they feel like their purpose and calling is, I most definitely would recommend being a firefighter.
And if anybody's watching, we'll send them to our website and they can connect them to you.
Yes, please,
as far
please,
as for
please.
recruiting.
Yes, ma'am. You can follow us on Instagram or Facebook. And you can also go to our website at joinhuntsvillefireandrescue.com. Fill out an interest card. We will be hiring before that year is out. So hope you're ready.
Okay, thank you, Corey.
Thank you.
The angel of the Lord found Hagar near a spring in the desert. It was the spring that is beside the road to Shur. And he said, Hagar, slave of Sarai, where have you come from, and where are you going? I'm running away from my mistress Sarai, she said. Then the angel of the Lord told her, Go back to your mistress and submit to her. The angel added, I will increase your descendants so much that they will be too numerous to count. The angel of the Lord also said to her, You are now pregnant, and you will give birth to a son. You shall name him Ishmael, for the Lord has heard of your misery. He will be a wild donkey of a man. His hand will be against everyone, and everyone's hand will be against him, and he will live in hostility toward all his brothers. So she gave this name to the Lord who spoke to her. You are the God who sees me, for she said, I have now seen the one who sees me. That is why the well was called Bir Lahai Roi. It is still there between Kadesh and Bered. So Hagar bore Abram a son, and Abram gave the name Ishmael to the son she had borne. Abram was 86 years old when Hagar bore him Ishmael.
Verse 7 of Genesis 16 says, The Spirit of the Lord found Hagar. There's a lot of history in this desert scene. Ishmael, son of Abraham and Hagar, becomes the son of Abraham through whom the Arab people had their beginning, just as Isaac was the other son of Abraham through whom the Jewish people had their beginnings. But today, we speak not of history, but of courage in private battles. Again, verse 7 of Genesis 16 says, The Spirit of the Lord found Hagar. There is deep emotion in that short phrase. Now there's Hagar, alone in the desert, betrayed, pregnant, no husband, no hope, no future. But God's Spirit communicated to Hagar, Go back home and I'll take care of things. And Hagar finds courage in the mere fact that God knew where she was. Hagar said to the Lord, You are the God who sees me. She named the spot, she named the spring Ber Lahai Roi, and I'm sure I'm butchering the Hebrew, but maybe that's close. Ber Lahai Roi means well of the living one who sees me. Hagar thought nobody cared where she was. She thought nobody even knew where she was. But the Creator of the universe knew. The courage of the commonplace is the courage to do the right thing when no one is looking, when you won't get a pat on the back for it. Courage of the commonplace is a mom I know who is taking care of a severely autistic child. She loves him and has given up a social life so that she can take care of her son. No one is there every day to congratulate her. She gets no trophies for that. But day after day, she exhibits the courage of the commonplace. Or it's another mom I know who raised 2 boys alone and insisted on working, although she could have made more money, frankly, on government assistance. That's courage of the commonplace, where no drums beat and no awards are given. Courage unnoticed by people, but not unnoticed by God. Just ask Hagar. God sees me, she said, and she took courage. I love Hezekiah's tunnel. Behind that tunnel is a story of courage that is 2,600 years old. It's nearly 2,000 feet long. And the story is about Hezekiah and Sennacherib, one of my favorite Old Testament stories. But today, it's a tunnel underneath Old Jerusalem through which tourists or spiritual pilgrims or school children can walk. The late Norman Burns told me about going through Hezekiah's tunnel with one of his son's classes when their family lived in Jerusalem. Norman was bringing up the rear when a little boy in front of him froze. I understand the little boy's fear. I've been in that tunnel, and it's long and dark with water up to your knees. The claustrophobic little fellow put his arms on both sides of the wall and wouldn't budge. "We've got to move," Norman told him. "The class is moving on without us." Finally, the little boy said, "If you'll keep your hand on my shoulder, I think I can make it." And they did. Christian courage comes from recognizing the hand of the Creator of the universe on our shoulders. Are you isolated, lonely, afraid? The one who matters most has his hand on your shoulder. Be courageous. You are not alone. You might not get a trophy, but the one who hung the stars in space sees you and smiles. Be of good courage, for courage is a common denominator in the extraordinary stories of ordinary people.
And your love is never failing. It's always there for me, ever faithful and prevailing, setting my spirit free. It has no end and no beginning, fills the ocean deep, and it goes on and on and on. And I could go on and on and on. There was a great divide, but you did not ignore me. On that cross you died and rose again in glory. So when this world fades away, Jesus, you'll be there to stay. And your love is never failing. It's always there for me, ever faithful and prevailing, setting my spirit free. It has no end and no beginning, fills the ocean deep, and it goes on and on and on. And I could go on and on and on and on and on and on and on, on and on, on and on, on and on, on and on and on, on and on, on and on, on and on and on. I could go on and on, on and on, on and on and on. But when this world fades away, Jesus, you'll be there to stay. And your love is never failing. It's always there for me, ever faithful and prevailing, setting my spirit free. It has no end and no beginning, fills the ocean deep, and it goes on and on and on. And I could go on and on and on. But your love is never failing. It's always there for me, ever faithful and prevailing, setting my spirit free. It has no end and no beginning, fills the ocean deep, and it goes
Thanks for joining us for TV Church today. I'm Kristen, minister to kids and families here at First Baptist Huntsville.
And I'm John, minister to young adults. That would be those in their 20s and 30s. Now, you've just joined us from all across the Tennessee Valley, and we want you, wherever you are, to feel like a part of First Baptist, the church at the heart of the city with a heart for the region. So to find ways to do that, check out our Facebook page and our website, fbchsv.org.
We also want to invite you to take a look at tvchurch.info. There you'll find a number of helpful resources like ways to connect or previous episodes. You'll also find a great resource there that Travis has written with you in mind. Stuff I wish I had learned in Sunday school.
Now please join us for this prayer, which is adapted for today's message from Psalm 27. Lord Jesus, you are our light and salvation, the stronghold of our lives. Help us remember there is nothing to fear.
We ask that we may dwell with you and you with us all the days of our lives, that we may gaze upon your beauty and seek your presence.
Help us remain confident that we will see your goodness at work in our world. Help us to be patient for you, to look for you, to be strong and courageous all the days of our lives. Amen.